I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty.
First item is approval of the agenda. We have a short agenda. Anybody have anything you want to move around?
I'll move for approval of the agenda.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Next item is mayor's report. And I can tell you that I and Vice Mayor LaMarche went to the TML legislative meeting in Nashville on Monday and Tuesday, and of course there's a lot of talk about state budgets and how it's going to impact towns and cities, and we were assured that there will be no change in state shared revenue this year, as well as there will be no change to the hall tax. Both of those are important to us, and so we're glad to hear that. Anything you want to add?
They did vote on the health care, that Tennessee would not follow the president's thing on the health care, that it was declared unconstitutional. It was a pretty good vote, I thought.
Well, it had to be a two-thirds majority of the House, which it was.
And there were quite a few people there this year. I thought more people than usual at this meeting from across the state of Tennessee, and I think it has a lot to do with the economic downturn and a lot of the legislative things that are going to be coming before the legislature this year. So it was good that we were there and had an input, and that we found out a lot of good, I think, information. I also brought back some information for the alderman that's running, Ron Honkin, on the other side.
All right, the next item is Citizens Forum. This is a time when any citizen can address the board with any concern that you have. Anybody? Next item is approval of minutes from February 24th.
I've read the minutes and move that we approve them as written.
I'll second it.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Abstain.
Oh, you weren't here, right?
Yes.
Next item is business items, and there's only one item, the fiscal year 2011 mid-year museum committee appointment, and we have one applicant, right?
Yes, sir.
With this, what would that bring the number of
Well,
up to?
with this one, we would have had one space open, and due to some attendance issues, we'll now, after this one, we'll have 3 open.
Okay.
So,
And they are authorized for 15?
yes,
So 12.
yes.
All right. Any discussion on this?
I was curious if Mr. Bondurant is a resident of Farragut. I see it's a 37934 zip code, but he gives his address as Knoxville. And we have a stipulation of percentage of the board or that committee to be actual members of the or residents of the town. Do we
have a handle on that?
Yeah, it's 2/3 of the members have to be residents, and we do meet that criteria.
Okay.
Motion to appoint.
I'll move approval.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Next item is ordinances, and for first reading, it's ordinance 11-01, a rezoning request for 12800 Union Road, parcel 50, tax map 151, located on the south side, approximately 850 feet east of Saddle Ridge Drive, 3.92 acres from C1 to R1, William H. Piper, Revocable Living Trust applicant.
The applicant for this rezoning is actually the heirs to this property, and they are requesting to rezone this parcel from C1 to R1 because the current use is an R1 use. There is a house and a barn on the property. It's close to 4 acres in size. It used to have a blueberry farm in the open field. In the back of the property was where the blueberries were. The front portion of the property that faces Union Road is wooded, and that is where the house is located at. The reason this is zoned commercial is when the town incorporated back in 1980, we generally, for the most part, we adopted the county zoning map, which included this area being zoned commercial. And the reason the town did that was to avoid some lawsuits at the time of incorporation. All the land through this area, including this property, are used as single-family residential. And it is a mini farm. The R1 zoning district is the only district that provides for agricultural uses. The purchaser of this property is wishing to continue to use it as a home and a mini farm, and the home loan cannot be obtained for residential purposes if the property is not zoned for residential purposes. The Planning Commission recommended unanimously in favor of this rezoning, and the staff also recommends approval of Ordinance 1101.
Seems to me to be a no-brainer.
Yeah, I just have one question, and I agree with the mayor. I think it is a no-brainer. We need to help these folks do what they need to do. But my question, I think it's kind of an obvious question. If the church wants to expand at some future time, if they wanted to buy that, if the people decide to sell that field back there for parking, or if they wanted to build a ministry building or something back there, how hard would it be to get that? Shouldn't be difficult to get that rezoned if they wanted to subdivide it and sell that.
Actually, within the R1, churches are allowed, but we would recommend that it be rezoned to the same as the rest of the church if they did come through, and we would just, as part of it, you've often seen rezonings go through where we've recommended prior to the second reading the plat being recorded if there's a revised property line so that it would be become part of the church's land.
Right.
But a rezoning wouldn't even be necessary for the church with regards to that.
Excellent.
Any chance they might bring back the blueberries? Many fond visits to that place when I first moved here. That was a great resource to be able to go out there, especially with a guy named Mr. Piper.
Mr. Piper.
Too bad he didn't have peppers, but he had blueberries. So it was good. Yeah.
More discussion?
This is somewhat unrelated, but I'm just thinking off the top of my head now, and I'm looking at the zoning map pertinent to this issue, and I noticed that the small parcels adjacent to this property, bordering Union Road, of course, are still C1.
Yes, and actually, over the years, I have talked to a couple of folks when they have, when they either were looking at selling or buying and everything. Actually, more than a couple over the years. It's been pretty much every property has had a discussion about rezoning. At the time, mortgage companies did not require the use to coincide with the zoning, and so we're seeing mortgage companies kind of tightening up with that. And those uses are single-family residential currently, and we may see rezonings in the future for these as they transition with transition with property owners because of the mortgage, more or less protecting their investment in what it is that they are lending money on. It's never a good idea to use a road, particularly a road such as Union, as a zoning line, as a transition.
I was just thinking if we ever widened Union Road, now we've got these small parcels sitting there zoned commercial, and someone could swoop right down and put something there that
It's
we
not
might
ideal.
not necessarily approve of.
Right, it is not ideal. Lack of visibility probably would, even if you do widen it, your visibility still is extremely poor as far as a commercial development.
Except a convenience store, adjacent to all those large neighborhoods, present and future.
Motion.
Motion to approve the ordinance as written.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Next ordinance is second reading, ordinance 11-02, ordinance to amend the Farragut Municipal Code, Title 5, Chapter 2, purchasing policies.
Currently, our purchasing policies are located in the municipal code, and this ordinance will be removing the majority of the purchasing policy from that code. As discussed at the workshop on February 10th, the purchasing policies will be managed in a separate document approved by the board to allow for greater flexibility. Remaining in the ordinance will be the authorization of purchases over $10,000, which must be approved by the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, and the designation of the purchasing agent. These items are currently in the ordinance and by state law will remain, and staff recommends approval of ordinance 11-02 on second and final reading.
All right, we've already voted on this once. So,
I read through the rather lengthy document. I think it's 30 pages long, but I did notice a couple of typos in there that we probably ought to get corrected.
That's actually going to be on the next item. That's under our resolution.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll move approval here.
Second it.
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Next item is a resolution. Consider approval of Resolution 2011-3, resolution to adopt purchasing policies and procedures for the town of Farragut.
Now that we've taken them out of the municipal code, we do have to have some policies. So this document before you is pretty much the same as the one you looked at on February the 10th. We have revised a few things that you all had mentioned, and so those changes have been made in the policy in front of you. Of course, we're going to be moving this to allow for greater flexibility in management. And let's see here. I'm trying to think of all the different things we changed. I think we changed the emergency purchases to make the board aware of that within 24 hours of that event. And I believe the other one was the ethics portion. And we've pretty much just copied the ethics portion of our ethics ordinance and adopted it into the purchasing policy. And so those are the only two changes we had from the February 10th meeting. Suggested changes or suggestions?
Madam Recorder, on page 11 at the top of the page, the sentence reads, "This method of solicitation is used when the cost of goods, materials, and services will be $3,999 and $1,000." And I think that should be when the cost of services will be between $3,999 and $1,000.